Okay, so this week the point of the class is, point of the lectures is really just to try and talk through those passages from the investigations in the reader. So it really won't make sense if you just do the lectures. It's very important you be doing the reading at the same time. Is reading enjoyable? But enjoyable is a strong word. Intriguing? Intriguing? I said mystifying. Okay. As I say, I do think his main point here is relatively simple once you get it. And when you get it, it is a single point he's making all the way through. So I hope that by the end of this week, it'll be possible for everyone just to sit down and read it fairly straightforwardly and see what he's doing. Okay, so let's start out by looking at what he says about images in understanding. So most of today consists of me showing you long quotations from Wittgenstein and reading them out, but I hope this is helpful. Okay. How does it come about that we all use, no, this isn't Wittgenstein, actually, this is me. Okay, so hard to tell the difference. How does it come about that we all use words in much the same way as one another? Well, Wittgenstein's answer is, in practice, we all do apply the same words to the same objects, and we all do draw the same conclusions from a particular word applying to an object, right? There's just sameness in what we do in particular cases. That's all that underpins our all using words in the same way as one another. Now, the thing is, if that's right, there's a real puzzle about how there can be such a thing as getting it right or wrong in your use of a word. If there's just what we do in particular cases, then where do right and wrong come from? I mean, the natural picture is to think, look, I'm going to make a contract. I'm going to say, let's use the word like this, and then you specify how you're going to use the word. And then if you use the word in accordance with the contract, you got it right. If you use the word in a way that breaks the contract, you got it wrong. Right? That's a natural way to think about truth and falsity or right and wrong. But the whole point last time was that picture doesn't work. That picture of the thing in the middle, the thing that you have to keep faith with, doesn't really make sense. Because the only way you can explain what is meant by the contract is by giving examples, by using the word in particular cases. The natural way to think about understanding a word is that, well, there's something here that in your head that you know what's meant by the word in particular occasions when it's used. When you have the word in your vocabulary, you get something in your head that tells you how to use it, and then getting it right is keeping faith with that thing, getting it wrong is breaking faith with that thing. And when you think about how much work perception does, if you're asked what does red mean, you show someone a red thing. If you're asked what does cube mean, you show someone a cube. So the idea would be understanding the word cube would be a matter of having a picture of a cube in your head. That tells you how to use the word. Yeah, that's a really natural idea. So then getting it right when you use the word will be a matter of applying the word to this kind of thing, and getting it wrong will be applying it to something that's not this kind of thing. Yeah, that's where truth and falsity come from. And his point is, an image in your head can't tell you how to use the word. So for those of you guys who just came in, we're really hammering away at the same point as last time. So if you still have reservations left over from last time, feel free to air them still. The image in your head can be interpreted in endlessly many different ways. One poignant example, I see a picture, it represents an old man walking up a steep path, leaning on a stick. How? Might it not have looked just the same if he had been sliding downhill in that position? And that's I've just actually spent half an hour this morning when I should have been working, looking at pictures of people going uphill and thinking, no, maybe they're sliding downhill. Right. So you can see this guy in either way, right? You can see this is a still from a movie, either where he's tottering uphill or where he's sliding steadily downhill. Yeah. And maybe Martians would naturally describe this as a picture of someone sliding downhill. Right? Maybe on Mars, that's just the way you get around. You get your stick, you toss it up, and then you slide down. The picture in itself doesn't tell you how it's to be interpreted. The picture could be interpreted in endlessly many different ways. So the picture in itself can't be the answer to the question, how am I to use the word? So a cube, this could stand for any kind of six-sided figure. It could stand for any figure with a right angle in it, any figure with two right angles in it. There are millions of different ways you could use that image. You could interpret that image. The cube on its own can't tell you how to use the term. It's only the cube together with an interpretation. This is a cube. You see what I mean? It's only when it's got the legend under it, apply the word cube to any cubes. That can explain where your understanding of the concept cube comes from. So he says the picture of a cube did indeed suggest a certain use to us, but it would have been possible for me to use it differently. So just to say, for you guys who've just come in, just to say where we are, we're really going over the same stuff as last time, but focusing on this thing about images, that having an image in your mind can't tell you what it is to be using the word right or wrong, because the image can be interpreted in endlessly many different ways. That make sense? What is essential is to see that the same thing can come before our minds when we hear the word, and the application still be different. So you might get this picture of the old man, and you interpret it in terms of walking uphill. I get the picture, I interpret it in terms of sliding downhill. Would the meaning be the same if we were using the picture differently? If you have interpret the word cube in terms of this picture to mean anything with at least one right angle in it, and I use it to mean anything with six sides, any shapes, then are we attaching the same meaning to the sign? Well, clearly not. Yeah, I mean, even if it's the same picture, if we are using the picture differently, then we're associating different meanings with the sign. So the picture can't be the key thing. The same thing, the same picture could come before our minds when we hear the word cube, and the way we're using the word cube could be wildly different. So would the word cube then have the same meaning for you and me because we're associating the same picture with the sign? And Wittgenstein says, I think we shall say not. Yeah? So the picture can't be what fixes when it's right or wrong to use the word. So standards of truth and falsity for your use of words can't be being fixed by pictures. It's not right to think of it in terms of keeping faith with a picture. So you might say, well, look, it's not just having the cube. You've got to have something about how you're going to use the picture. So suppose you've got an image of the cube and you get the lines of projection. Yeah, and you're showing, this is the way you use it. And that's the picture you have in your head. Yeah. So now when you see a cube, what you've got to do is, when you see, what should I say, a candidate cube out there, and you ask, is this a cube? What you've got to do is take the picture of the cube that you've got in your head and draw the lines of projection in that way to the thing out there. And then if you can't do it, you've got a cube. And if you can't do it, you don't have a cube. You see what I mean? Whereas if you've just been thinking, well, this is just being used to stand for anything with at least one right angle in it, then that wouldn't be the right method of projection. You see what I mean? If I'm explaining this correctly, that should be perfectly plain. So some of you look very puzzled. Is it? The point about the cube here is that you could apply it in endlessly many different ways. Yep. So what you're trying to do with this diagram here, and what one is trying to do with this diagram here, is to say, okay, this is how you got to apply the cube. Yeah, apply it by using these lines of projection to the candidate cube. Yeah. But at this point, I guess the problem is obvious. What's the problem? Aha. This is not that obvious. Well, maybe that solves it. Yes?
But where did you get the idea of the cube in your mind?
Well, let's say that picture of a cube, yeah, you just got by being shown cubes. You kind of took a mental snapshot of it and put the file away in the great warehouse of memory. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's that the cubes onto which you project your image don't, resemble in the same way these two cubes. Like, these two cubes are qualitatively identical.
Yes.
Maybe if you're trying to apply it to real life cubes, there's some sort of expanding it, or I don't know.
Yeah, for all this picture says, you could be having to do some expanding, or arbitrary expanding, yeah, of these dimensions, of these dotted lines. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So if it just says if that just means draw some dotted lines mentally from what's in your head to the thing out there, well, I could do that with this thing. Yeah, I could take some dotted lines in my, in imagination and connect them to different bits of this thing out there. Is this thing there for a cube? Hello? Is it too early for this kind of thing? Is this a cube, class? No, that is not a cube, right? But I did the thing with the dotted lines, right? I mean, you couldn't see me, but I promise you in my head I did it. I did the thing with the dotted lines. The thing is that just having the dotted lines there doesn't tell you exactly what you're meant to be doing with the dotted lines. Yeah?
But doesn't that just mean that you didn't have the cube in your head?
Well, I got that picture in my head, yeah? I wasn't interpreting it as a cube, you're right. Yeah? But another way to put it is to say, I didn't have the concept cube in my head. Yeah? But we're trying to explain what it is to have the concept cube.
But you didn't have that image in your head, or you falsely applied the dotted line.
I did have that picture in my head, yeah? But I promise you, I just took dotted lines from one vertex of the cube to here, from another vertex of the cube to here, here, here. I connected it up. I didn't do it right, I agree. Maybe I wobbled the dotted lines on the way out, right? But there's nothing in that picture says it's not right to wave the dotted lines. You see what I mean? The picture of itself doesn't tell you what you can do. I took it that was your point, that you could be splaying out the dotted lines or splaying them in. You see what I mean? What you need is some instructions with the picture. Yeah, but the instructions then are the key thing. It's not the picture that's doing the work. Yeah, a way to think of it is these kind of pictures always need what do copy editors call it, a legend. They always need some writing below them to tell you how to interpret them. But then it's the writing below them that is providing your understanding of the term, not the picture itself. The picture is just an illustration. Yeah. So here's Wittgenstein. Suppose, however, that not merely the picture of the cube, but also the method of projection comes before our mind. How am I to imagine this? Perhaps I see before me a scheme showing the method of projection. Say a picture of two cubes connected by lines of projection. But does that really get me any further? Can't I now imagine different applications of this schema too? So is that plain as day and completely uncontroversial, what he's saying? Yeah. So then the thing is, the picture in the middle drops out. The picture in the middle can't be what drives your understanding of the term. But now there's a really basic problem that I think this negative point, there isn't this thing in your head that is telling you how to interpret the sign. I think that's extremely forceful. But it's an extremely uncomfortable position you get to, because now you have this real problem of saying how there can be such a thing as getting it right or wrong in your use of the word. Because there isn't that contract you have to keep faith with. So what's defining rightness or wrongness? You just get to use the word however you like. And I think Wittgenstein really struggles with this. I don't think, if you read the text, he's really kind of agonizing over this. This is tortured, the text. And I don't think there's a simple, not that I've ever been able to see anyway, definitive resolution in the text. I'll show you as far as I think he gets, but it's not at all clear what happens next. And that basic question, how does it happen that we are all using the words in the same way? That's not been explained either. If it was the picture in your head could do the work, if we all had the same pictures in our heads and the pictures told you how to use the words, then that would explain it. That would explain how we all keep in sync in our use of language. But what's happened is we've lost that explanation of how we all keep in sync, and it's very hard to see what an alternative might be. Okay. So that's to run through what I think the key point about images is that Wittgenstein's making in those passages. Plain enough? Another way to get at the negative point here, the natural picture that he's trying to root out of understanding and meaning, is when he says that understanding is not a mental process. That is a really striking remark, right? That is one of these famous quotes from the investigations. And that's it's a striking remark because how could it not be a mental process, right? Surely understanding a word is something that goes on in your mind. But his point is that's not the right way to think about it. Try not to think of understanding as a mental process at all, for that's what confuses you. You think of understanding as what goes on in your mind when you're using the word. That's really the key thing, what's going on in here. What's going on out there when I talk, when I apply the words to objects, when I respond to what other people are saying. That's just peripheral. That's not the core of understanding. And he's saying that gets things round the wrong way. The core of understanding is not in the mind. The core of understanding is how you react to other people, how you use the sign yourself. It's in these apparently outward things. Try not to think of understanding as a mental process at all. At one point he says, if God looked into your mind, he would not have been able to see who you were talking about, what you were thinking. What's going on in the mind is all these sensations, images, words running through your head, all that stuff. If God just looked in there, he wouldn't have any idea what you were saying, what you meant. The only way God could get what you're saying, what you meant, is by looking at the context, looking at the way you use the words and what kind of context you're using the words in, what the people around you are doing with those words. Try not to think of understanding as a mental process at all, but ask yourself, in what sort of case, in what kind of circumstances do we say, now I know how to go on, when that is, the formula has occurred to me? In the sense in which there are processes, including mental processes, which are characteristic of understanding, understanding is not a mental process. A pain getting more or less, the hearing of a tune or sentence, these are mental processes, where you've got something running through your stream of consciousness. But just having something running through your stream of consciousness can't be the same thing as understanding. I mean, someone mentioned last time in discussion, it's such a natural thing. Someone's trying to explain a word to you, someone's trying to explain successor to you, and you suddenly get it. You think, okay, now I didn't get it before, but now I got it. Right, that happens, yes? And he says that's such a natural idea. It's as if we could grasp the whole use of the word in a flash. Suddenly you get it. And you say, now I can go on. And the natural picture there is this one that we were talking about last time. Someone's explaining the word to you by giving lots of examples. You get this in your head. You say, now I got it. Now it all drops into place. Now it makes perfect sense. And you say, okay, so applying that as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. But the trouble is, you can have that experience. I mean, this is certainly familiar to me many times, that you suddenly think, yes, now I got it, now I can go on. And then you start trying to use the word, and it turns out you didn't get it after all. Right? You can have that feeling, now I got it, now I can go on. And then you try to go on, and you just can't. You know, people smile when you try to use the word that you think you just grasped. Yeah. So that's what's happening in this kind of case. The beginner's learning. They say, "Hey, now I got it. Now it's all clear, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The teacher says, that's great. And then you carry on, you keep using the sign, and then you go 96, 97, 104, 3, 22, 437. And at that point, you thought you got it all in a flash. And maybe this is the very string that ran through your head when you thought you got it. But if this is what's going on up here, then you didn't get it. Yeah? The thing that was in your mind, the thing that was running through your mind, doesn't matter for your understanding. This in itself is fine, but it does not tell you how to use the word. Yep.
So is he saying that there is just no kind of objective truth at all, or is he saying that truth is every situation?
Yeah. That's a really excellent question, and that's a vexed question. It's very hard to know what the positive conclusion is here, and we'll actually spend quite a bit of time on that. Yeah. The thing to get here, the important thing is the reason you say that, which is great. That the natural picture of there being objective truth or falsity is that this specifies what has to be so for your use of the word to be correct. Yeah, that's your rudder. That's the thing you steer by through this perplexing world, right? The standards of right and wrong up here. And then you see those standards of, that way of fixing standards of rightness and wrongness doesn't work. So that's destabilizing. That's really powerfully destabilizing. And then you say, well, what's going on? Does that mean there is no right or wrong? That's a natural reaction. They're just the way we go on. No right or wrong at all. You try and keep in tune with other people, but there's no more to right or wrong than that. Or else you might say, no, we've got to give some other account. That was the other thing you were suggesting. We've got to there is right and wrong, there is truth and falsity in your use of words, but we've got to give some other explanation of how there can be such a thing. Yeah, I think, I'll show you as far as I've got in thinking about this, yeah, in just a moment. So let me just postpone trying to get there. But his use of the words custom and practice is really key here, I think. I think when he talks about the existence of a custom or practice of using the word, it's in the context of customs and practices that truth and falsity emerge. So this picture that's being thrown out is that the standards of truth and falsity are fixed deep inside the mind. The alternative picture is that the standards of truth and falsity have to do with the existence of a community and lots of people using the words in particular cases. But how exactly the mechanics of that are meant to work is something I hope you guys will sort out later in the class. Yeah. Yep.
I just wanted to clarify, because
So yeah, good. Yeah.
I was not trying to argue that determined standards of truth and falsity gives a neutral image. What bothered me about the discussion last time is that we seem to be saying because that's not where we get truth and falsity, it doesn't exist.
Oh, it doesn't exist, right.
I think that each individual does use the word according to some internal understanding that they have, and they could be wrong. But that is what tells them how to use it, and it might be wrong.
Right. How could the thing in the head be wrong?
It's not what determines truth and falsity, because it's not standardized. So what's in your head is not in my head. Like you said here, you might think you get it, but then diverge later. But that
Right.
just means that you have a different internal concept, and that means that it can't be determined by wrong because it's not standardized.
Okay, this is good. I'm glad you're coming back. This is it's complicated, but one possibility would be that each of us sets their own standards of right and wrong with this thing in their head. Yeah, but what you want to do is have your standard of right and wrong match up to everyone else's. Sorry? Ideally, right. I think even that picture Wittgenstein means to throw out. You think what, sorry?
I don't think it's possible. Everybody's striving for it.
Everybody's striving for it. I don't, yeah. The idea is there's no such thing, yeah. That is just a picture that at first seems attractive, but as you think about what it means, it kind of shimmers before you and completely destabilizes. It just breaks into pieces. It's not really a coherent picture. Yeah, that's the idea anyhow. So I just don't want too easy a reconciliation here, if you see what I mean. Yeah, because he really means to be blowing this up. Yeah.
I just want to get some clarification.
Sure.
Wittgenstein would not say that, well, I mean, he would agree that 97 plus 1 equals 98.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so he agrees there is right and wrong, like stuff like that.
Yes.
The point is, when you say the series x plus 1 equals, and you have all these numbers, his point is that there's no meaning behind x plus 1 unless you're in a community that has practices, like there's certain expectations on how you use that formula.
Something like that, right. But those expectations, the important point is, that talk about community and expectations must not be understood in, I think, the way the last questioner was suggesting, as a kind of reconciliation, that we've all got the same kind of expectations in our heads. The important point is, saying that 97 plus 1 is 98 is true or false. It is true. But that talk about truth doesn't have anything to do with what was running through our heads. It has to do with what the community does in particular cases. It has to do with the existence of a custom or practice of using these terms. Yeah.
So I guess when you put it that way, I don't really see what's so amazing about it to say that x plus 1 doesn't have any meaning and it can't be true or false unless there's some sort of community that defines how to use it.
Okay.
I guess I don't see that as being like shocking or controversial.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess the last questioner does find it controversial. Indeed, barely. Right, isn't that right? You did find it a disagreeable...
No, I
Oh.
completely agree with everything he said.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't.
Okay. So we're all agreed that this thing in the head just drops out. There's only the use in particular cases. Yeah? In terms of the existence. Yeah. No, okay. It can't determine how you use it.
I mean, it does. Like, how else are you going to use it? Am I going to use it by your standard of right and wrong? I don't know what's in your head. I use it how I think it
Okay, this is what I mean. I don't want too easy a reconciliation here. Wittgenstein is denying that this could possibly be determining how you use the word. Because when you ask, what does this mean? The only way you have of explaining what it means is by giving examples. So its content is just filled out by what you actually do in a particular cases. It gets dragged along behind your use of the word in particular cases. It has its meaning in virtue of that. It can't be determining what you do. Rather, what you do determines what it means. Melissa? Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand you. So let's say that you're trying to learn a new word and so people keep like pointing
Right.
out chairs to you, like a whole bunch of green chairs, and I go like, look it.
Right.
And then you're trying to figure out what liquid means, and it seems like there are two hypotheses you could have. Either it means chair or it means green.
Right.
And so it seems like I could test the hypothesis that it means chair, or I could test the hypothesis that it means green by like
Yeah.
grabbing a green thing that isn't a chair and going lick it, and then seeing whether you agree with me or not. Or
Right.
whatever. Or vice versa.
Can you hear? Can you hear what Melissa's saying? Yeah, good.
So it does seem, I guess I would side with, it does seem like in order to explain what's going on, my experience of behavior of other people, I need to be able to grant that it's possible that there are like two hypotheses.
Uh-huh.
There are two hypotheses. One
Yeah.
is that like it means green and one is that it means chair. I guess I could also accept that what each, so there's this thing in my head, a hypothesis. In fact, there are two of them. But neither hypothesis is an image. I mean, I couldn't,
Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't encapsulate the hypothesis with what it means green with an image, because then I would have like a green square in my head that was liquid underneath. But then it could mean green or it could mean square or whatever. And what I mean is like hypothesis one is that it means green, not that it means square.
Very good.
Or
Yeah.
green square
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Yeah. It's determinate what the hypothesis is.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm not There are these things in our head, they're hypotheses, they explain what we do, but they're not images.
Okay, very good. I think that's beautifully articulated. That, just to, so we don't, I keep saying I don't want too easy a compromise solution here. This is contradicting what you said. Yeah, what the last question about one said. Aha. Okay. Well, see, there's a way of hearing what Melissa is saying is that you've got these hypotheses in your head, and it's the hypotheses that when you get that right, that's what dictates the standards of rightness or wrongness for the use of the term. Yeah. Now, a way of hearing what you were saying, which I thought was what you were saying, is forget about that stuff in the head. There's only the community and the context of the uses of the words by lots of different people. Forget the stuff in the head. Understanding is not a mental process at all. What's the big deal about that? That's a way of hearing what you said. Now, it's not a picture, but it's a hypothesis, and the hypothesis is a mental thing. Forming the hypothesis and testing it out, that's mentalistic. That's going on in here. The important thing is not to think that all these mean just the same thing. Yeah, these are all very different views. Yeah, so it's trying to change your view, or if I didn't pick you up correctly. Okay, but don't run the different pictures together. Yeah, yeah.
I'm just having, a lot of trouble with even with the notion that it's not a mental process. Like, say
Right.
you in learning it, you have to pick out all these particulars. That maybe understanding, consists in some sort of like, maybe a memory of your experiences with it, or like,
Right.
or,
Sure,
something,
sure.
something like that. But
Yeah.
What exactly is it that he means by, it's not mental at all, and that it's just
Okay.
something agreed upon in the community? Like, isn't it like downloading that information that the community agreed upon in your mind, essentially,
Yeah.
something like that?
No. That's the picture image we throw on it. And I think Melissa articulated it very well in terms of hypotheses, right? That's the natural way to think of language learning, that what the child has to do is formulate hypotheses about what everyone means. So if someone's saying, that's a blicket, that's a blicket, that's a blicket, then the child might say, oh, it's a chair, that's what they mean, it's a chair. Or they might say, or my rival hypothesis is specifically green chairs they're talking about. These are two rival hypotheses as to what people are talking about, and I formulate them, and now I can go and test them. And when I've done my testing, I say, oh, blicket just means green chair. Something like that. Yeah. Now, the thing about the thing about that is that it's always really natural when you're thinking about language and understanding to think of the person who understands a language as already having a language, just not the one that they're trying to understand. And in that language, they can then form hypotheses as to what's going on in the external language. Right? Now, that might even be right. There might even be an internal language that each of us has that they use to interpret English. Yeah? And then in that language, you can formulate hypotheses as to what's going on in the external language. And that would be like the brain teaser case I began with, where you really do have that concept of x squared plus 1 or whatever it was. But here, we're talking about new concepts, new primitive concepts, concepts that aren't defined in terms of anything else. So we are trying to consider, we are trying to consider someone who doesn't have the concept of successor, right? Someone who doesn't have arithmetical concepts already. And they're now being taught the use of the term successor. So the question is this person who doesn't have any arithmetical concepts, we're trying to explain how they get an arithmetical concept, can this person formulate the hypotheses? Well, maybe by successor, they mean add 1. That can't be what's going on, because they don't have the concepts to formulate the hypothesis. Yep, there's a line. Okay, you haven't raised anything yet. Good.
We can just imagine a blind person. He never
Yeah.
The shape have four angles.
He can be defined. Yeah.
Like that, just because others taught him how to use the word, but they didn't have they never see the image
Right.
of that like that. So, but this doesn't disturb him to use this word cube or something.
Okay, that's very good. That's completely fair enough, and that fits perfectly with Melissa's model, and I think your model too, that he's getting his understanding of the meaning of the word cube by being given an explicit definition of the term. Okay, that's fine, and I don't have any quarrel with that. That presupposes a prior understanding of some concepts, and he presupposes he knows what an edge is, he knows what an angle is. Once he's got all that, he can define cube. That's just fine. We're really trying to focus here, though, on cases where the learner doesn't have any antecedent concepts that are relevant in terms of which you could define the new concept. I mean, this must happen if concept learning happens. Yeah, I mean, you've got to start somewhere in learning concepts. There was a time, presumably, when you didn't have the concept successor, and you got it from somewhere. So how did you get it? Not by having it defined to you, not by forming the hypothesis, maybe successor, they mean add one, because you didn't at that point have that concept. So how was it done? Yep. Okay, that's where we're coming. Okay, so yeah, let's go 1, 2, 3. Let's undo the dam yet.
I don't actually think that Melissa's theory contradicts my understanding. I think that
No, I think Melissa's picture was a very good articulation of what I thought your take was. Yeah.
I don't think that she ever said that your hypothesis determines the standards of right and wrong correctly, if I'm not understanding you correctly. But that you have an internal hypothesis and that you use that hypothesis to tell you as an individual how to use a word doesn't mean that you think that you know that you have it right, and that doesn't mean that it determines what's right and wrong. It can't possibly, because each person is using the word according to their own hypothesis. I think that's what Melissa was saying, but that can't be what's right and wrong, because each person's hypothesis is their own.
Okay. So far as it goes, that's fine, but I hope it's clear that what I've just said has been targeted at exactly that idea, that when you're learning the concept of successor for the first time, and you don't already have the concept add one, you're just getting onto the tracks in your learning of concepts. This is the important thing about these. This is actually why I began with that thing about the brain teaser. If you've got a relatively sophisticated concept that you can define in terms of other concepts, then I have no problem with your picture of forming hypotheses here. But when you don't have the concepts even to form the hypothesis, then forming a hypothesis can't be what's determining what you're going to do with the word. This is not the right place to be talking about hypothesis formation.
Why do we need words to form hypotheses? I think a little kid who doesn't have language.
You have to have concepts to form hypotheses. You have to have concepts to form hypotheses.
We don't have an appropriate word here to, I think, necessarily what Melissa means by hypothesis, but a little kid who's just coming into the world, has no concepts, looks around and thinks to himself without the words, I wonder what my mother means when she says mommy. Maybe she means herself. And he thinks all of that. He thinks all of that.
Does he? So he already has a whole lot of concepts.
Maybe you don't call that thinking.
I don't, well, if there are no concepts involved.
That's what we're trying to talk about when we say hypothesis. It's not like what we use now in scientific paper when we make a hypothesis. The thing that the kid forms when he thinks, when he tries to figure out what's being called mommy. And he does test that, even if you don't call that thinking.
Yeah, if you just think through the consequences of what you're saying, hypothesis formation requires concepts, right? You've got to have the concepts in terms of which to formulate your hypothesis. Jerry Fodor puts this round the other way. His take is in many ways different to Wittgenstein's, but there's a clear point. Fodor thinks the only sense you can make of language learning is in terms of hypothesis formation. Therefore, since you can't form hypotheses except by using concepts you already have, therefore, Fodor says, concept learning is impossible. You can't acquire new concepts. The only concepts you ever have are those you had innately when you were born, and it's absolutely impossible to learn any other new concept as you go through life. Now, that's usually regarded as a difficult view, but it's straight where you're headed if you say that concept learning is always a matter of hypothesis formation, because hypothesis formation requires you already have the concepts. And if you say, no, by hypothesis formation I don't mean that. I don't mean hypothesizing that it means this or that, where I specify this or that in terms of some concept I already have. I mean something else. Then that's just to say this is dropping out. We're not now thinking about a concept in terms of which a hypothesis is being formulated anymore. Yep.
I guess I agree with what she's saying, but so how few concepts are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about like if say that you know, I'm as young as, you know, very very young, and someone's trying to explain this to me.
Right. Yeah.
I have a basket of oranges, you know, and it's
Good. Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
they bring
Yeah.
a second
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
and a third one, you know. If I just, you know, lend this person my attention, will that actually go into my head? What is she doing? What is she trying
Right.
to figure out? What is she trying to explain to me? Like, certainly, you know, I mean, I don't think that anyone, you know, little voice in their head actually ever speaks in such, you know, coherent sentences, or, you know, like.
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
And I just don't see why we can't just say it's my, like, you know, appreciation of a pattern. You know?
Appreciation of a pattern.
Like,
yeah.
you know, that is accompanied
Yeah.
by a certain set of characteristics, or, you know, is it, or are we saying that because I have to consult with her, you know, to see if I got it right, that's what makes it not a mental process?
No, it is not the second thing. Yeah.
I don't see how there can be anything other than something mental in virtue of which I, you know, could.
Okay. Very good. It's really important to get to have all this articulated, because these natural ideas are really what Wittgenstein is attacking. If you just take the notion of seeing a pattern, right? If you say, well, I don't need to make the hypothesis explicitly, I don't need to quite verbalize what the hypothesis is and so on. I just need to see a pattern. That's all I mean by concept formation. Then the next question is, what is it to see a pattern? You can think you've seen a pattern, but not really seen the pattern. Whether you've seen the pattern only shows up in what you do in the particular cases. Where's this guy gone? This guy thought he saw the pattern, but he hadn't seen the pattern. We think, when we see this guy's initial responses, oh yeah, I see the pattern in what this guy is doing. But then when you get along here, you say, no, I didn't see the pattern. Seeing the pattern, in the only sense that's relevant here, is not something that's going on deep in the head. It's just a matter of being able to go on in the right way.
Seems like a category mistake, like understanding is behavior, you know?
The question is, who's making the category mistake? Yeah, I mean, remember, Wittgenstein is saying understanding is not a mental process. And what you're saying is that's a category mistake. It is a mental process.
I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Well, it's a matter of being able to use that thing of Campbell's, being able to use the words in the right set of contexts. Let me give you a kind of autobiographical example. I have a 3-year-old who, about a year ago, he was learning to use language for the first time. Yeah, the first few set of words. And he has a habit of not letting me do what I want him to do. Yeah, and I said to him, you better watch out, Buster. And that was the first time I'd used the word Buster like that. And he got it, I think, and a couple of sessions later he said, don't do that, Buster. And I said, don't call me Buster, Buster. And he got it, right? Now, I guess what really struck me about that was how subtle it is. I mean, if he hadn't got it, I couldn't have explained it to him. You know, I couldn't have given him a definition. You know, he's only got it. At that point, he only had a couple of dozen words. You see what I mean? It would have been impossible to define. But is that thing Campbell talks about. We rely on shared patterns of interest, shared sense of humor, shared kind of ways of being, ways of acting with each other. We rely on that the whole time in getting things over to each other, that you just pick it up and you run with the ball. And it's not this, if you looked into his mind, you'd have been able to see there what he meant by buster. You see what I mean? There's just the way you use it in particular contexts. That's all there is to it. How could that be something of seeing a pattern or forming a hypothesis? That's not the way it goes. It's like playing basketball or something. If you see how to intercept a particular kind of run with the ball, then it's not that you've got some hypothesis in your mind about how to do it. You just have that ability to catch the ball and run with it. Yeah.
So then are all of our, impressions that we're going through some sort of mental process? Like we're going through some sort of process of hypothesis formation?
Yes.
Is all that stuff like epiphenomenal?
Yes. It really is. I mean, in these basic cases, there are cases where it really is hypothesis formation, but in these basic cases where you don't even have the concept, well, you might have the words x plus 1 running through your head. You might have a tune running through your head. Something might be running through your head, but that's not the key thing, whatever's running through your head. The key thing is what you do. So let's just, yep.
Could it be the case that we acquire these basic concepts by deriving understanding of it on our own in the case of like logical and arithmetic truth?
Yeah.
Or like x plus 1, you have like 2 blocks, and then you add another block with 3
Right.
blocks. So you derive your understanding of these very basic concepts, not from other like notions that you know already,
Yeah.
but from your own derivations of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it really seems very likely that there's some big connection between being able to apply arithmetic, being able to count things, and getting the concepts in the first place. But the same point will apply to whatever you do with the blocks, that getting it right is just a matter of doing the right things with the blocks. If someone does the right things with the blocks, then they understand. And if they don't do the right things with the blocks, even if they've got some particular formulations running through their mind, they don't understand. If you count all crazy, then it doesn't matter if you're in your head thinking x plus 1, that's what I mean. That doesn't matter. Or thinking you see a pattern, that doesn't matter either. Yep. Sorry, I'm picking people who haven't asked yet.
So
Yep.
what if you have 97 blocks and you add on 1 block?
Right.
You have 98.
Yeah.
You say, oh, it's 102 blocks.
That's right.
Don't you have to write those?
Don't you have what?
Don't you have to, isn't it correct? But because by actions, you have to use apply x plus 1.
That's exactly what you have to say, yeah. Yeah.
So then the words such as,
Sorry?
so say and you have 104 instead of 98, then that's just whatever.
Well, how are you going to check? You count them again. You say, oh, I thought I had 104 there. And you count them again. You say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, yeah, it is 104.
So you can't count 104 because you have 98 blocks.
Oh, no, I go 96, 97, 104. Yeah, it's 104.
But is that person applying the algorithm correctly? Aren't they? So they have 98 blocks.
Yeah. Well, the point is, it's not a matter of algorithm application at all, right? They're doing it wrong, right? I'm not even in Berkeley, right? Even though we always to raise the question, who's to say what's normal? Right? This guy's not going to get right, okay? You see what I mean, right? So I think there's no question about that. This guy's definitely getting it wrong. But wrongness here is not a matter of applying an algorithm. That's the thing. If you define rightness or wrongness in terms of applying this algorithm, this can be made out to comply with the algorithm just as much as this can. The sense in which this is wrong, the idea is much more primal than something about derivation from an algorithm. This is just plumb wrong. That's bedrock. That's where we come in. That's where we start, with this being the wrong way to go on. And it's not explained in terms of anything else. It's really good that you're feeling uncomfortable. This is a very radical idea. I mean, as I say, I'm not channeling here. I do think this is correct. But it's very important to get that this is not an easy idea. Yeah, it's very destabilizing. Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully I'm not asking you to repeat yourself too much, but could you say more about what you mean when you say that in terms of like seeing X plus 1 as algorithm, in terms of algorithm application, like how do you make both of these sequences fit with that?
Oh, what does it mean, X plus 1? How would you explain what it means? Well, you go 1, 2, 3. I gave you examples, right? For example, 97, 104, 3, 22. That's what you're doing when you're adding 1. How else? I mean, you can't explain this in terms of some more primitive operations. We're right over time, but we'll stay on this point for next time. And next time I'll try and say something about what Wittgenstein's positive picture is. So your task for next time is read the Wittgenstein, hone your objections, and skewer it next time. Okay? Thanks, guys. Great questions.
John, so I was just wondering about